After 11 years together, my wife suddenly asked for a divorce, claiming she doesn't want our life anymore. Meanwhile, I discovered an emotional affair and was left with our two kids for months. With her spending 200K on pointless remodeling and gaslighting me as the problem, I'm shattered. What went wrong? This will be a lengthy post. My wife and I are most likely separating after 8 years of marriage and 11 years together. The purpose of this entry is to comprehend the events that have transpired and attempt to detach in a healthy manner. Perhaps I can gain some perspective on whether I am being unreasonable for thinking this way or if I am to be held accountable. The beginnings. We met when she was 23 and I was 28 at a bar in San Francisco. I approached her and it was one of those instant connections. We went on our first date, became intimate, and were officially boyfriend and girlfriend within a month. She claims that I gave her her first real orgasm. Our relationship was profoundly close and intimate, extending beyond physical affection. We shared everything with each other. We would stay up late talking for hours, and it felt as though we were instantly best friends. By the 6th month, she was spending the night almost every evening. She had a drawer in my dresser and a toothbrush in my bathroom. The phrase "I love you" was exchanged quickly, but I, being a bit more guarded, took about a month to reciprocate. Once my lease ended, we moved in together after about a year of dating. I also gifted her Tiffany pearl earrings for her birthday, though she did not seem impressed, a potential red flag. We were that couple that was often seen holding hands and kissing at parties. We met each other's parents, and life appeared to promise a bright future. Honeymoon phase. Living together can either strengthen or weaken a new couple, but it brought us closer. We did everything together, going to the gym, enjoying weekends, having dinners, hiking, and traveling. We visited Mexico, spending an entire week solely having sex, lounging on the beach, and sipping margaritas. I would pick her up from work almost daily. We prioritized each other and often expressed our affection through gifts and acts of service. My wife was profoundly caring and thoughtful during this period, making me feel more loved than I had ever felt before. If you asked our friends, they would affirm that we were deeply in love. Not everything was perfect, though. We were generally financially struggling and scraped by frequently, yet we didn't mind. I lost my job when my company was acquired, and my boss was a terrible person who abused people verbally in the office. I definitely internalized the toxic environment, which impacted my career. I confided in my wife about my situation, and she was incredibly supportive, offering to assist me in finding new employment. More on that later. Eventually, I secured a much better job after a few months, completed the Chartered Financial Analyst program, and things seemed improved. Shortly after, I proposed, and we were married that same year. She was 26 and I was 31 at the time. We had a beautiful wedding financed by her parents, and we honeymooned in Fiji and New Zealand. We were on cruise control, and I eventually decided to pursue a graduate degree in business administration. I became discouraged while studying for the graduate management admission test and wanted to give up at one point, but my wife urged me to persist. I ultimately achieved a good score and was accepted into an Ivy League institution. Just as the pandemic struck, we relocated to the East Coast. Around this time, we began discussing family plans. My thought was that this remarkable, intelligent, and caring person would be ideal for starting a family. Graduate school. I completed my graduate program while my wife worked remotely during the pandemic. Classes were remote as well, allowing us to spend ample time together. We took walks and explored when possible, but we remained each other's top priority. She became pregnant that summer, and we were overjoyed to start a family. I excelled in my program and made a significant amount of money through investments, which ultimately funded my tuition and provided a nice sum for a down payment. I am probably one of the few people to leave graduate school financially better off than I entered. When my wife was 6 months pregnant, she ran into my office while I was on a Zoom call, crying, to inform me that her father had died either from a stroke or a heart attack. This marked the first significant challenge we faced as a couple. We immediately traveled to California and spent 2 months there. I continued my classes remotely and did my utmost to support my wife during this overwhelming time, as being pregnant in addition to losing a parent was particularly challenging. I also discovered that her parents were financially strained, which was somewhat surprising considering they owned a nice house, several luxury cars, and 2 horses. We returned to the East Coast and attempted to restore a sense of normalcy. Following her father's passing, I paid off my wife's student loans, as he had been covering those expenses. Children. Our daughter was born that April, just a couple of months before my graduation. She was perfect, but there were complications during the pregnancy that caused my wife to lose a significant amount of blood. Fortunately, everything turned out fine and we returned home as a family. Both her mother and my mother came to help us during the initial weeks, which was undoubtedly challenging, but we collaborated and supported one another. Our daughter experienced colic and would scream for extended periods. At times, we both felt overwhelmed, but over time, things improved. I graduated and received several job offers in New York City. However, my wife wanted to move back to the West Coast. Unfortunately, we did not discuss this as most couples would. While we were in New York City looking at apartments, my wife was unusually quiet throughout the day and had a panic attack while I was on a phone interview. I received a call from her mother informing me that my wife was in distress over the prospect of living in New York City. At that point, I felt compelled to abandon my job plans and we returned to the West Coast. I found a remote job in New York City doing investment research, but it required me to work East Coast hours. I had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day. I felt frustrated and somewhat resentful that the decision had not been a discussion and that my hand had been forced. Problems emerged. We moved back to the West Coast and stayed with my parents until we could purchase a home. We initially anticipated staying for 3 months. However, it turned into 9 months due to the housing boom causing intense competition, and we experienced multiple outbids. My wife appeared happy most days, but I soon realized she was struggling with two significant issues, one being a new mother and two living with her in-laws. She became easily triggered by trivial matters, such as my mom suggesting a way to care for our baby or my dad asking her about her job. I was generally exhausted, waking up at 4 a.m. and managing a newborn. I attempted to maintain peace, but it often felt like I was walking on eggshells around my wife, who was frequently unkind to my parents, who let us stay with them at no charge, assisted us financially for a down payment, and provided regular meals. At one point, I asked her to apologize to my mother for her rudeness. I assured my wife that we would move out as soon as possible to gain our independence. My wife and I were intimate regularly, sneaking around like teenagers. She became pregnant again but suffered a miscarriage. We learned that complications from her first pregnancy had caused scar tissue, requiring her to have surgery to correct it. After the operation, the doctor informed us that we would likely not be able to have another child. We were both devastated, but I reassured my wife that one child and her presence were enough for me. We find a house. After months of bidding, we successfully purchased a house, and I effectively covered the entire down payment. We also acquired a BMW X5 for my wife, though we still only had one car. Occasionally, I would go golfing with friends on weekends, but just a couple of times every few months, and I would check with my wife if that was acceptable. She would agree, even if she didn't mean it. One day, I returned from golfing, and she roughly handed our daughter to me, hopped in the car, and drove off, clearly feeling emotionally overwhelmed. When she returned, she expressed feeling trapped because she had no car, and I sensed that she was struggling with motherhood. I was ill-prepared to address the potential postpartum depression, and I could have done more to lighten her load. I went out and purchased a second car to prevent that situation from occurring again. There were other instances where she would have breakdowns after watching our daughter alone. Eventually, we established a routine where I would start work at 4 a.m., our daughter began attending daycare, and I took on the responsibility of daily drop-offs and pickups, as well as cooking dinner almost every day. My wife worked in the office, so she was away most days. When I asked to do anything for myself on the weekends, go to the gym, play golf, or do housework, or even took too long to get coffee, my wife would grow annoyed, leading to arguments, although they were not catastrophic. We remained intimate and she became pregnant with our second child. Job stress. After the birth of our second child, my wife's company was acquired, and I recognized that she needed to find new employment. I ultimately found her a job at an artificial intelligence technology startup after extensively researching potential employment options. She received another job offer, but I insisted that the equity at this startup could be valuable. She wanted to accept the other offer, which included a $250,000 cash bonus, and stated that the position I found was beneath her. I persuaded her to apply and interview, and she ended up getting the job, coming into my office while I was working to share the company's compensation package, which included $1 million in equity over 4 years. I was taken aback and after being awake since 4 a.m. that day did not respond well, exclaiming, "What the hell am I doing working so hard then?" Regardless, I apologized and we went out to celebrate. We now had a full-time nanny, but I continued to handle transporting our daughter to and from school, cooking dinner almost daily, doing most grocery shopping, and working full-time. My wife frequently remarked that I did not care for the children or that I was not around enough and claimed to feel abandoned, despite my being gone for only 1 to 3 hours. I eventually became overwhelmed and found a new job with better hours and a 50% salary increase, although it required me to be in the office. Our nanny helped manage most things, but the increased hours strained our budget. We argued about how much money we could spend. However, we eventually reached an agreement. I later learned that my attempts to reduce the nanny's hours made my wife feel unsupported, despite the fact that I was doing more than my fair share. My parents also assisted several days a week, while my wife's mother lived far away. At this point, I had sacrificed many of my hobbies and struggled to even make it to the gym due to my increased responsibilities. My wife's new job was going well, it was exhilarating, and she received a promotion after 6 months along with a salary raise. I settled into my new job and things began to improve. My wife frequently attended work dinners and happy hours, leaving me to care for the kids in the evenings. I was happy to support her and trusted her completely. I encouraged my wife to accept a managerial position, which she eventually did, earning another raise with more equity. At this stage, my wife was working extensively and appeared visibly stressed from work and the time spent with the children. I took on additional responsibilities, hoping to support her. Eventually, she hardly engaged in household chores, did not cook, did not grocery shop, and did not do laundry. When I asked to take time for myself, it often resulted in friction. We continued to make time for each other, went on dates, and remained intimate, but I could sense that she felt increasingly distant, which I attributed to stress at work and with the kids. She began to discuss work almost exclusively, seemed disengaged, doom-scrolled on her phone frequently, and appeared to lose interest in socializing with friends. The incident. One weekend, my wife stated that she needed to go into the office as things were chaotic. I offered to stay with the kids, which turned into a 5-hour commitment. The following weekend, the same scenario played out. I believed I was being exceptionally supportive to help my wife excel in her job. Late that afternoon, I texted her to ask when she would be home but received no reply. I texted again, simply asking if she would be home for dinner but still received no response. Eventually, I called but once again received no answer. I checked her location and saw that she was driving in my car and heading home. Oddly, she stopped near the train station in the neighboring town before hours and remained stationary for 30 minutes. I called again, but she did not answer. When she finally came home, she was unusually quiet, and I inquired why she hadn't answered. She replied that she had given a male coworker a ride to that area. My instincts raised red flags, but since we had never encountered trust issues, I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking things. Exhausted from taking care of the kids, I said I was going to the sauna, but upon getting into my car, I noticed her earring in the passenger seat. I confronted her immediately, demanding to know what had happened, and she swore on our children's lives that nothing was amiss. I chose to trust her after 10 years. The following week, she did not return home until between 10 p.m. and midnight and would leave 20 minutes after waking up. I was increasingly anxious about what was happening and found it difficult to sleep. Ultimately, we sat down to talk, and she made some vague comments about not wanting sex as often as I did, 3 to 4 times a month, and vaguely stated that she did not want to give up on our relationship. I began to investigate and discovered that through our iPad, she was communicating with a coworker every day and was seen at the same house before and after work several times. When I attempted to discuss my concerns with her, she would shut down or gaslight me, claiming that I was the problem for tracking her movements while I was merely desperate to uncover the truth. Eventually, we had a significant confrontation when she called one evening assuring me that she would be home soon, but then claimed to be in a different neighborhood than her location indicated. It all spiraled downward from there, and we ended up in therapy where she revealed that she was involved in an emotional affair. I admitted that we could have improved various aspects of our relationship, but her suspicious behavior persisted, and eventually she insisted on a trial separation. I felt abandoned for 2 months while caring for our 2 children, with her coming and going sporadically. Then she lied directly to me about where she was staying and slept at this man's house. I hired a private investigator to monitor the house because I suspected she was lying, and indeed she entered at night and departed in the morning. She repeatedly lied about spending time with her female boss and another female coworker that night. I was furious and expressed my anger at her, but I did not divulge what I knew. Things continued to deteriorate, and she persisted in gaslighting me about the situation. The admission. Finally, we took a walk together, during which she confided that she no longer wanted our life, that she married too young, had children too early in her 30s, and disliked our house. It is important to note that she made all these decisions except for my proposal, and I never coerced her in any way. She expressed a desire for a divorce and hoped we could remain best friends and co-parents. For months, she had claimed she wanted to quit her job but now insisted she loved it. She cited various reasons, such as my previous job depression prior to my MBA, that I had abandoned her with the kids, and that I belittled her repeatedly for 2 insignificant comments over 11 years, though these justifications felt far-fetched. We attempted therapy again, and I invested significant effort into mending our relationship for the sake of our marriage and children foolishly, and it appeared to be effective. However, whenever I broached the subject of our relationship, she would either become extremely upset and repeat her desire for a divorce or completely shut down. I am utterly heartbroken and have not slept for months while managing full-time work and caring for 2 children. Throughout this entire ordeal, she has shown little empathy or emotion, has begun spending money recklessly, over $200,000 on unnecessary items and remodeling a bathroom, and continues seeing this man without any consideration for how it affects me. She has started to demean my character, claiming that I am neither ambitious nor successful despite being in the top 10% of earners, and gaslighting me into believing that I am the problem for becoming upset about the affair. Her mood swings from extreme happiness to exhaustion or complete withdrawal. Her behavior has become unpredictable at times, and her reasoning does not align with her actions. She cannot seem to move past minor issues from 5 to 10 years ago and brings them up as rationale for her behavior. Although I have finally managed to have her be present as a mother, I am so traumatized by this experience that my health has deteriorated. I recognize that it is over at this point and lawyers are now involved. But once we had children and life became real and she was not receiving sufficient attention or validation, she sought it outside of our marriage. Our problems were minor compared to those faced by many, and the vast majority of people would say we hit the lottery in life. Everyone familiar with the situation believes she has experienced a mental breakdown, with some suggesting she may be a narcissist. What does the internet think? Story 2. My ex came back after months and things felt great until I revealed my side hustle as an erotic massage therapist. He said, "I understand," but after a drunk night out he cheated, shattering our unspoken agreement. Now can trust ever be rebuilt? I will explain. I am an erotic massage provider. Yes, that means what you think it means, happy endings. There is no sexual activity whatsoever, and I actually stopped having casual sex in my personal life over a year ago. As a result, I make a decent income completely within my own boundaries. I took up massage as an additional source of income to help fund other business ventures because I briefly attended massage therapy school and am genuinely skilled in the trade. Additionally, I am a businesswoman with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so I am extremely thorough. Still, I must admit that I did not anticipate creating a consistent clientele as I have. My ex-boyfriend returned to my life approximately 4 or 5 months ago, and our interactions were platonic. He had a girlfriend at that time, and I was just recovering from depression after my business partner from another venture was murdered. He provided comfort to me, understanding how close I was to my business partner. He helped me resume some business planning, which is why I pursued massage to support my larger goals. Fast forward. We began to realize how much we missed each other, how well we worked together, and all the feelings that arose. His relationship was deteriorating with his girlfriend at the time because their lifestyles were not very compatible. I informed him that if he wanted anything serious with me, he would need to take responsibility and resolve that situation first. No avoidance. He broke up with her shortly afterward. The issue is that they live together and their lease is not up for another 3 months. However, we have managed to make it work despite the chaos. He stays at my house every night and works from his place during the day. His ex has actually moved on, is dating and living her life. I am happy for her, so I know he is not involved with her specifically, but this is where the issue arose. Eventually, he began to express that it genuinely bothers him knowing that I do massage. I understood that because when I initially informed him, I truly did not care how he felt about it since he had a girlfriend and I was single, not dating, and focused on my goals. However, once we decided to plan a future together, all of that changed. He became increasingly insecure about it and would pick fights with me over trivial matters, which would escalate into what felt like manic episodes. We are currently in therapy, so I am awaiting any potential bipolar diagnosis. I am not attempting to self-diagnose. My mother is bipolar, so I am very acutely aware of the signs. The arguments typically revolved around the topic of massage. One day I went out to look at apartments and ran into my best friend at a nearby bar because she works in that area. I went inside to have a drink with her, and I suppose when he called me he could tell that I was tipsy. He disapproved of this because I tend to take more risks when I am tipsy or drunk, particularly around him because he treats me like a little girl when things are good. For example, he does not allow me to carry any of my own belongings, open doors, or drive. He wants to be needed by me in every way, and I reciprocate that energy and more. The next thing I knew, I called him later that night when I knew he was awake and he did not answer. I called 2 or 3 times. I thought, what if something happened to me? To make a long story short, he slept with another woman that night, and I found out only because we were discussing whether we should resolve our issues after an argument. We contemplated our options, including the possibility of moving in together, and something inside me prompted me to ask if he had been intimate with anyone since we started dealing with each other. He replied that he had and then asked what about me, to which I obviously responded no. Before any men adopt a "what did you expect" mentality, I anticipated that he would adhere to the agreement we established together. That agreement was that our sexual relationship was exclusive. He knew from the beginning what I did for work. Yet every time we argued, it was as if he had never set the guidelines that he was my boyfriend and I was his girlfriend, despite the fact that we had made it very clear to our friends, family, coworkers, and everyone in between. Moreover, if you tell me that when it is convenient for you and spend every day of your life with me, what should I expect? After arguments, he would say, look, it's not you, you're not doing anything wrong. I understand how you earn your income this way. He would say we would work it out until our situations changed. I mean, after all, he only lives with his ex-girlfriend. It just seems like some men enjoy the upper hand of telling a woman one thing and then changing their story when it suits them, without informing the woman that they have switched things up, as if they are too afraid to play fair. I was honest from the start. That is all I ever wanted in return.